In previous videos, I've spoken about the longevity of the Planet of the Apes brand. But it's always struck me as interesting that this franchise, and in particular the first film, has still remained popular over 50 years after its release. And since the film series really only borrows a few core cues from the source material of the book, I think it's a real testament to the production design, the script, the acting, and above all, the costumes of the apes that has managed to lodge itself firmly in the hearts of fans all over the world. I also think it's interesting how merchandising and in particular action figures have only really developed in the last say 20-30 years for this IP. We did have a range of Mego figures in the 70s, but other than that there wasn't really much to support Planet of the Apes in action figure form. But ever since the 90s, it feels like many major toy companies have had an attempt at releasing a line of Planet of the Apes figures. And it's interesting because I think now almost every scale has been attempted to meet the need of action figure collectors the world over. And so today I'm going to be turning my attention to Sideshow's offering, and I'm going to be taking a look at the Astronaut Taylor figure. Now, I've always been a real big fan of Sideshow's packaging. However, for this line, I feel like it leaves a little bit to be desired, to be honest. Rather than opting for a film poster or a production still from the film, they've actually instead decided for the front cover to use an image of the portrait of the action figure itself. This isn't inherently wrong or off-putting in any way, but I think the rest of the design of the packaging could have been a bit more exciting, could have felt a bit more like Planet of the Apes. Yes, we do have the silhouette of the Statue of Liberty, of course, and we can see Taylor on the horse there. And of course, it does have that sort of orangey sort of hue which has become associated with the film, but it's not overly distinctive, and I think there could have been a more earnest effort to do something more imaginative with the art design. Sadly, things don't get much better for the reverse or the side panel, because we are just seeing the same image replicated 3 times now, which is this portrait of the figure. There's a little bit of information about the figure on the back, which is cool, and we can see the other figures in this wave, which is excellent. Of course, we have Zira, Zeus, and of course, Cornelius. I do feel like the interior window is much improved though, because we can see the shape of the packaging is sort of cut out a little bit through that window display, which I think is quite nice. It kind of looks a bit rugged, like it's cut out the rock, which is a nice attempt to do something a bit different. And I think obviously the window display is always exciting to see the figure there. But on the left hand side, I think there's a few more shots from the film been woven in, and we have a bit more information about the film, which I think is well attempted, and I think this works pretty well. As you'd expect, the figure itself is very nicely presented when it's out of the packaging. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for this look, the astronaut suits. Taylor doesn't wear it for very long in the film, but there's something iconic about this look. The head sculpt on this figure, I have to say, is pretty solid. I think they've actually captured a really decent likeness of Charlton Heston. It's not perfect by any means, and the sort of lacquer that they've used on the face makes it a little bit too shiny. But other than that, I think this is pretty strong. I'm actually very happy with this. And it's probably worth pointing out that actually Sideshow did an alternate head. They did 2 versions of this figure. The only difference between them, of course, is the head sculpt. And on the alternate version, he has the beard. And I have to say, without having him in hand, from the photos I've seen, I'm not as keen on this sculpt. It doesn't look quite as good, but it's still fairly solid, I think. So I guess at this point it's entirely up to you which version you prefer. For me personally, I like the clean shaven version, mainly because I get to have a Charlton Heston figure, so if I wanted I could swap out the outfit and he could be Charlton Heston from any number of films in this period. Now, the tailing on the outfit is absolutely wonderful. It is a fairly simple costume, to be fair, but it is a nice, vibrant white, and the material they've used is a sort of stiff, solid cotton material, which feels kind of hard and rigid, but that's a sign of quality, and I really like it. And I love all the little badges, like the answer, thinly veiled NASA badge there, the American flag, his name. It's all very nicely done, and I particularly like how the collar is buckled up, and this works really well, and he has these buttons down the side, so you can undo the buttons there, and I just think this is very nicely tailored. He does have some pockets sewn into the upper chest there, but these are non-functional. There's also some nice detailing in the belt, which is also a button, so you can undo this if you want. It's not actually functional, it doesn't do anything, but nevertheless it is nice to have this little detail there, which I think is a nice touch. His boots and lower legs are well tailored as well, so there's this pocket here as you'll notice, and again it's non-functional, it's just purely based on aesthetic, but still it looks pretty good, it's nicely rendered. The boots are particularly nice though. I feel like they've made an effort here to sculpt them accurately, but actually a nice paint wash running through them. We can see the silver on the zip, and there's a little bit of dirt running through these boots, which I think is nicely done. And he also has his standard Planet of the Apes stand. Now, it isn't personalised. Usually with Sideshow, they'll put the name of the character or the film. In this case, they've just opted for the film, but this is fine. This does the job for me. He's got the standard Sideshow articulation from this period, so he has a ball-jointed neck, meaning of course he can spin his head side to side, right the way around, and he can look up and down a pretty decent distance as well, so this is great. He's got the ball-jointed shoulders, of course, so again, he can lift his arms up and spin them round. Again, because the costume is quite tight and the material is quite restrictive, you do have to persevere a little bit when you're posing him, but it is well worth it. He has a swivel at the lower forearm as well. He's got double jointed elbows, and he has an extra pin swivel at the wrist, so his wrist can rotate 360 degrees, and of course it can hinge all the way to the left and right as well, which is great. Now, he does have articulation in the upper abdomen, sort of mid chest area, which allows him to swivel from side to side and arc and lean and bend over as well, which is pretty cool. He's then got the ball-jointed hips, so they kick out to the side, they kick forwards all the way, and they kick back a good distance as well, which is fantastic. And then, of course, aided by the double-jointed knees, he can kick his legs all the way to his back if he wants. And the rubber boots are fairly flexible, but he also has articulation in the foot, which you probably can't make the most of because of the boots, but they do swivel from side to side and, of course, hinge up and down. Naturally, Taylor is going to be light on accessories. However, Sideshow have made the effort to give him something extra, so he does have his backpack, which is glimpsed briefly in the movie, but it is blink and you miss it stuff. But it is really cool that they have accurately rendered this. This is what we see on screen when he opens his backpack, and it's nice to see. There's some nice little details in here, like this gyroscope and these little bits and pieces. Now, there's not many removable pieces, sadly, so we don't really get to play with them, unfortunately, but you can remove his pistol and his pickaxe, which is kind of cool. The pistol is nicely sculpted and it's nicely painted too. It is all pretty much one tone, but there is a little bit of a black wash running through it to make it look a bit more realistic and gritty. Sadly, it isn't one that's articulated, the chamber doesn't move, and there's no removable clip either, so it is just one solid piece. Now, I do have a slight issue with this weapon because he can't really hold it properly. His hand sculpt is absolutely perfect. There's no issue with him gripping it, and as you can see, his finger does rest on the trigger there, which is great, but it just looks a little bit too small to me. It just doesn't look like it's meant to fit in his hand. It's not a huge concern because I don't think we ever see Taylor with a gun in his hand in the whole film anyway, so it's not a deal breaker by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a little bit strange. And as for the sort of pickaxe, it's nicely rendered, it's a nice piece of equipment, it's nicely painted. The only problem with it is that it's just far too small and far too slender for the grip that we're given in his hand sculpt. He can't really hold it, it just looks silly. It either falls through his grip, regardless of which hand you use, or when you use gravity to sort of balance it in, it just looks kind of silly, really. It just looks too small. And that's pretty much it, really, for Astronaut Taylor. I have to say, overall, I really like this figure. I think it's really nicely presented. I think the costume is brilliant. It's a brilliant white. I think the patches and the labelling particularly look really, really vibrant and look really nice that they've sewn them in. So I think it's a good looking figure, particularly when you have the backpack on. I think it's quite a fun, nice visual. And as I said, for me personally, having a Charlton Heston figure clean shaven like this has a lot of versatility to it, and I'm just really glad to have one of these iconic cinema heroes on my shelf. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.